All right, it's about 9 a.m. It is Thursday, October 5th, 2023. And yeah, I just want to say a quick word. Photography is my kind of hobby, but like so many of my hobbies, it has suffered greatly in recent years due to my chosen career, as well as the fact that I've had two kids. And so, one of my biggest laments, I guess, is the fact that I have this closet full of cameras. It's like a literal arsenal of cameras that unfortunately I rarely use. And the thing about cameras is that I don't think that they are showpieces. I know there's some people who consider cameras like like a piece of art or something like that. But to me, cameras should be tools, and they should be working. They should be doing things. They should be capturing moments of your life. That's kind of, I think, what they're for. And so, yeah, I do lament the fact that they largely sit in my closet here, mostly unused. However, once in a while, I do get called on to do what I call semi-professional work. And what that means is that some third party needs me to do photo or video work for them. But it's semi pro because I've yet to take a payment for any of this, right? So the expectations are a little bit lower, but it is still, I still kind of treat it as a type of event photography work, right? So today, something has come up actually. One of my most frequent semi-pro employers is my wife, and today my wife is asking that I go do like a video project for her at the school library. So yeah, I'm going to be assembling some camera gear so that we can go do it. All right, so for video work, as usual, I would rely on the Sony A6400. Certainly would not rely on the Fuji X-T200. Not that it has a bad image quality, it just doesn't have controls that work well for semi-pro work. If you just want to let it go full auto and you don't really mind settings changing as they want, as the camera wants, white balance shifting as it decides to do whatever it wants, the exposure shifting however it wants, it'll give you a good image. I actually quite like the image coming out of it. Sometimes even preferring it over this, in terms of like no picture profiles, full auto type of thing. The picture coming out of this actually looks pretty nice. But when I'm doing semi-pro work, I do have to kind of ensure that there's no drifting and white balance and exposure. And so for that, this is the way to go. I certainly wouldn't use the Alpha 65 because again, it doesn't really have video in mind, and again, doesn't have very many sort of ways to manually control video type features. Autofocus also in video, not very reliable with that. So I'm going with this. In terms of lenses, I don't need something super wide. I find that in fact, when I do a lot of these videos, this 35mm f1.8 tends to work pretty well. But the thing is, it's very limiting to just have one focal length. And I find that usually I don't need the 1.8 aperture, except if I'm going for a very specific effect with the video. For something like what I'm doing, I expect 3.5 to be a pretty adequate aperture. So I think something like this, the 18 to 135 will work perfect. Allows me a lot of flexibility to go wide and to go in for a tight shot. And like I said, I don't really need super fast apertures, so the 3.5 to 5.6 should be okay. And this thing has image stabilization, so that's great. If I want to do handheld, that would work very well. The 35 f1.8, it's a small lens, so I might carry it with me just in case I need something, that kind of shot to have a blurry background. And this has also got image stabilization, so that's great. By contrast, something like this, the 11 mil f1.8, nice and bright and somewhat small, but it doesn't have image stabilization, so that kind of sucks. I certainly won't need this telephoto 18 to 300. So even though this will cover all the ranges that this guy has, and this also has image stabilization, it's so big and heavy, and again, I don't need to go to 300, so why would I bring it? So I think this guy is going to stay at home, just like I had feared when I got this lens. It's primarily going to be a birding lens. And then in terms of other lenses, I actually got this guy. This is the kit lens, the base kit lens. This is the slightly upgraded kit lens. I actually went out of my way to buy this guy. This is a recent acquisition. I do want to make a video about this and about this guy. I just never got around to doing it. So this actually would be a nice video lens too. I might throw this in a bag. This covers, a lot of the focal lengths that I think I'm going to need. Actually, it goes a little bit wider. It starts at 16. It goes to 50, which I think should be perfectly adequate. I doubt that I'm going to need to go to 135. So this is actually not bad. And in terms of aperture, it's 3.5 to 5.6, kind of like this guy. So, in terms of light gathering, it's not bad. And it has image stabilization as well, which is perfect. It even has the sort of additional bonus of having a power. So yeah, I can rack focus with this thing smoothly, which is nice. Now this thing is notorious for having a bit of a soft image quality, but that's more of a concern for photos rather than video. So I think I'll probably bring these three lenses. As for a tripod, I am going to bring a tripod to lock off shots. So that's going to be my gear. Of course, I'll bring some batteries as well. And then in terms of audio, I'm going to use the Rode Wireless Go system. I'm wearing one right now, but I have a second one, and so yeah, we can have two people mic'd up at a time. Yeah, I guess that's it. All right, so as it turns out for this gig, I wasn't really going to be the cameraman. It turns out that the students were being kind of taught and allowed to do their own video production, which is super cool. They were just grade 5 students, so they're already learning about how to do a shoot, It's not just about how to use a camera. In fact, I mostly set up all of the settings, and it's a lot of it is automatic. Handed it to a kid so that he just has to press record more or less. But it's about the other sort of fundamentals, like how do you frame the shot, right? So they were doing this thing in the style of a newscast, right? So you want to teach them about how to frame the shot, right? It's not so much about how to use that specific camera. So there's that. And those kids were actually remarkably well prepared too. And, I think it's largely thanks to their teacher, who kind of clued them in on how these things go. So apparently they had a storyboard, so they knew what kind of shots they needed coming in, They knew that there was going to be an interview segment between two people, and they knew that there was going to be one with the anchors sitting at a desk, right? So They even had graphics already set up to project on a TV behind them, so it looks like the news a little bit. So that's great. And yeah, so they also came in with whiteboards, and so they had like lines on them, so they knew about having a prompter, and there was a little kid holding a giant whiteboard so that the on-screen talent can look at it. So that's great. Um, of course, there are still things that you know uh, beginners are not going to be very comfortable with, right? So when the camera is rolling, you still got to perform, and so that stuff, that stuff, understandably, they weren't the greatest at it, but they're just kids, right? So they could use some work on their delivery, right? They could use some work on sort of like doing this thing where like you get your jitters out, you do your rehearsals, and then you stop, and then you go, right? So they don't have so much of that. It's a lot of just like flowing one thing to the other. A bad take, or okay, well then they just start doing it again without like having a nice pause before you do the take. I don't know, things like that. It's not a huge deal, obviously. Probably affects the editing process a little bit more to be able to see those pauses, right? Yeah, it was fun. I remember when I was in elementary school, we also had something like an AV club, but it was not as well organized as this. Mostly, like I don't remember learning anything about how to shoot, and I was more or less just given a camera. And I remember having to like shoot events for our like steel drum band. And so yeah, back then it was like this giant VHS camera that it rests on my shoulder, and I had to look through one of these things, and I'd like zooming in, zooming out, panning this way, panning that way, and choosing my shots just randomly. Yeah, this particular production was much more organized and put together than when I was in school. Anyway, that's it.